Okay, so this, well, maybe not this one because it's plastic, but if you could imagine holding a real human brain, everything that person ever thought, felt, imagined, every sense they ever had, every idea that's popped in their head, happened all in this little space. And so we're going to spend some time in this video going through all of those compartments and the anatomy that goes with the brain. All right, so when you look at the brain, hopefully you notice it looks kind of wrinkly. I don't know a different way to describe that, but it has elevations and depressions. The reason why we have these elevation depressions is because it increases surface area. By the way, that's the answer if anybody ever asks why there are folds and everything. It increases surface area. So we can fit more neurons in the case of the brain. And of course, we name everything. So all of these elevations are called gyri. All of the down parts are called sulci. So the trick that I use is if you're down and you're sad, you're sulking. And if you're excited and you go out dancing and gyrate, you're up. So gyri, sulci. And you see this pattern repeating for the major part of the brain out here. And so this is our cerebrum. In the back here, we have a cerebellum. And then over here are going to be structures of our brainstem. So we're going to go through cerebellum first. With the cerebellum, you're going to have distinct areas for different functions. And conveniently, they're named very similarly, or actually the same as the bones you already know. So starting out here, we're going to be in the frontal lobe. Frontal lobe is going to be responsible for output. This is where motor commands will come from. This is where you will have distinct locations for production of speech, moving your eyes around to be able to scan a room or read a page of text. But also when you're thinking about output, this is the very front part, the prefrontal cortex, where you make decisions. So it's another output idea. So personality decision-making happens there. Interestingly enough, probably not surprising, this is the last part of the brain to finish developing. Not usually until your late 20s does the decision-making part finally finish forming. Now, if you're looking for a landmarking, and how do you tell when you shift from one lobe to the next, there's a distinctive sulcus that makes it all the way across from here to here, and there's another one here to here. So this one right here separates out our temporal lobe, and with our temporal lobe being on the side, it's really close to the ear, so it does have a role in auditory processing, specifically on that superior temporal gyrus, that big one right here. If you were to flip this open, so pull it open, flip it around on the bottom of it, so if I look at it from a different angle, so if I just flip it over this way, right here is the uncus, and that's going to be for smell. This is actually where smell comes in through these nerves that will extend from here. It goes to this olfactory bulb, following that olfactory tract, going to that uncus for smell. If we come back for our side view here, I did mention this sulcus. This is a central sulcus that separates the frontal lobe from the parietal lobe. If our frontal lobe is motor, so this specific gyrus here, so the precentral gyrus, it's going to tell us to do things like move our hand, kick our foot. So this is specifically talking to skeletal muscle. The postcentral gyrus, the bump right behind it, has the sensory information to those structures. So if somebody was tickling your foot, you'd be able to move your foot by communicating right across that little divider. So here we have general senses. We talk about general senses of being the ones that are widespread throughout your body versus special senses having a dedicated organ. Like over here where we're talking about coming from the ear for hearing, or down here coming from the nose for smell. Those would be special senses. As we look at the parietal lobe dealing with general senses, it also has an area that overlaps with multiple lobes for allowing for working memory or understanding what's going on in our environment by processing several pieces of information. So putting together the general senses, vision is what's happening in the back, and some of our other senses from the sides. So if we do go all the way to the back, this is going to be our occipital lobe dealing with sight. I usually like to think of the brain kind of working like a projector. The eyes are going to project that image to the back of the brain. There's not a very clear dividing sulcus between parietal and occipital. So the biggest thing is just keep track of occipital is going to be the very back portion of the cerebrum. Now, you probably notice there's a big divider between those two sides. The right side of the brain processes information and sends out commands to the left side of the body. The left side of the brain does the same thing, but for the right side of the body. They do communicate with each other and are connected by this area of white matter here called the corpus callosum. The divider between the two is a longitudinal fissure. So the space is longitudinal fissure. The corpus callosum is where you're going to have axons allowing you to communicate between the two sides of the cerebrum. When you're working your way underneath, you'll see there's a space there. That is a ventricle. Ventricles are going to have cerebrospinal fluid. That's basically your transport fluid for the brain. We don't have blood running throughout all of these neural tissues. We have cerebrospinal fluid to deliver nutrients and clean up waste. So this is a lateral ventricle. That lateral ventricle, if you look at the back wall here, is made out of part of the thalamus. So the best way to find the thalamus is to look for a dot where it connects with the other side. That's actually what we call an interthalamic adhesion, because what you actually have happening is you have these two larger structures. So let me pull this out. So this big thing here, and they're going to reach towards each other. And as they do that, they adhere. And so that's where you find that dot. So even if it's not in a colored model like this, you typically will still see a circle there. So thalamus will make us a ring right around that. Hypothalamus is the part of it that follows below and makes a triangle. And then epithalamus is a line that goes over top. And so I like it better on this side. So we're going to switch over here. So the epithalamus is colored in white on this one. Thalamus in the center. Hypothalamus is a little triangle. Those three things together make up what we call the diencephalon. Off of that diencephalon, you will have some glands. Off of the epithalamus has the pineal gland. This is the one that releases melatonin and helps regulate sleep-wake cycles. Off of the front here, we have the pituitary gland, and I already switched sides, and I shouldn't have done that yet, because over here is that pituitary gland extending off of that hypothalamus. Oh, and I dropped it. All right, let's go back to this side since the other side's falling apart on me. So diencephalon, and then we will have our brainstem. Brainstem will have three parts: midbrain, pons, medulla oblongata. Midbrain has the two bumps in the back here. Pons looks like a circle, so for me, I think of a pond, like a round body of water. And then medulla oblongata is the last bump before you straighten out to become spinal cord. A lot of the functioning here is basic survival functioning. Things like respiratory, cardiovascular, blood pressure are happening down here. There are a few reflexes coordinated by all three. So reflexes in response to visual auditory information, reflexes involving respiration, cardiovascular function, digestive, those are happening here. Cerebellum is our last one that we're going to talk about, and this is going to be the part dealing with balance. So how this is going to work is it receives feedback from your body. So when you send motor commands down, you're going to send information also to here to say, here's what I'm telling the body to do. You're also going to send information back up about our general positioning, and that will go here, as well as information from the inner ear that deals with balance. So cerebellum, that's going to be our balance one. So the trick that I usually use for this one is I think of when they talk about people getting their bell rung and they feel really dizzy and they're off balance. So cerebellum deals with balance. All right, and that is our brain.